They say the customer is always right. But what happens when the customer is a young black woman and the airline staff decide she's a criminal? This isn't a story about bad service. This is a story about what happens when prejudice, arrogance, and a simple, fake ticket collide with the one person you cannot afford to anger. This is the story of Imani Carter and the single phone call she made from Gate 14B that didn't just get 3 people fired. It bankrupted an entire airline. Stick with me, because the karma in this story is something you have to hear to believe. The air in the Globalis Air First Class terminal at LAX was chilled to an expensive, scentless perfection. It smelled of nothing, which, Imani Carter knew, cost a great deal of money. At 28, Imani was a prodigy of numbers, a senior analyst at Ethelred Capital Partners, one of the most ruthless and powerful private equity firms on the planet. And today, she was the needle upon which a $4.2 billion deal was balanced. She was flying from Los Angeles to New York to present her final viability report. The subject? Globalis Air. Her report, bound in a crisp blue folder inside her monogrammed leather briefcase, was the document that would unlock the credit line Globalis desperately needed to stay solvent for the next decade. She was, in effect, flying to save the very airline she was currently flying on. Imani herself was the picture of understated power. A tailored graphite grey suit, a simple silk shell, and a vintage Cartier watch her grandmother had left her. Her hair was pulled back into a sleek, intricate bun. She was, by every definition, the embodiment of a first-class passenger. She approached the podium for priority boarding. The gate agent, a woman in her late 50s with a helmet of blonde-dyed hair and a name badge that read Brenda, gave her a smile that was all teeth and no warmth. "Good morning," Imani said, holding out her phone with the digital boarding pass and her passport. Brenda's smile flickered, her eyes doing a swift, dismissive scan, from Imani's face to her suit to her watch and back to her face. It was a look Imani knew well. It was the, "How did you get in here?" "Look, one moment, please," Brenda said, her voice a syrupy drawl. She scanned the pass. "Beep." Brenda frowned, the smile vanishing. She scanned it again. "Beep." "There seems to be a problem with your ticket," Brenda said, her voice suddenly an octave louder, loud enough for the other passengers in the velvet-roped line to hear. "A problem?" Imani kept her voice level. "I checked in this morning. Is the scanner broken?" "No, the scanner is not broken," Brenda snapped, as if Imani had insulted her personally. She tapped aggressively at her terminal. "This confirmation code, it's not valid." "That's impossible," Imani said, still calm. "That ticket was booked by our corporate travel division at Ethelred Capital. Perhaps you can try the record locator." She offered the number. Brenda ignored her, turning to her colleague, a younger man named Gary, who was smirking. "Gary, you ever see a Z-Class fare booked like this? Through Ethelred?" She said the name, as if it were ridiculous. "Nope," Gary snickered, not even looking at Imani. "Probably one of those scammy third-party sites. You know, the ones that promise a first-class seat for $50. The passengers behind Imani were stirring. A man in a wrinkled suit huffed impatiently. The humiliation was a physical heat rising in Imani's neck. "Ma'am," Imani said, her voice losing its warmth and gaining a steel edge, "I assure you, Ethelred Capital is not a scammy third-party site. It is the firm that is currently financing your airline's restructuring. Now please, check the record locator or find your supervisor." Brenda's face purpled. Being corrected, especially by Imani, was an offense she couldn't tolerate. She leaned in, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial, venomous whisper. "Listen, honey," she said. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, or who you think you are, but this ticket is fraudulent. The Z-Class fare is by invitation only for our top-tier corporate partners. It's not for people like... well, it's not for just anyone. The implication hung in the air, thick and toxic. People like you. I'm going to have to ask you to step out of the line, Brenda said, her smile returning, this time victorious. We will be confiscating this document. She gestured at Imani's phone as if it were covered in filth, and calling airport security to report a fraudulent attempt to board. The blood drained from Imani's face, replaced by a glacial fury. You will do no such thing, she stated. You will call your station manager. Now. I am the lead agent, Brenda said, puffing up. And I am telling you, this ticket is fake. Gary, call security. This woman is refusing to leave the boarding area. I will not be treated like a criminal, Imani said, her voice rising, drawing more stares. I am a confirmed first-class passenger on Flight 212 to JFK. I have my passport, my corporate ID, and a $15,000 ticket that your firm booked. You are making a catastrophic mistake. Oh, I'm making a mistake? Brenda laughed, a short, ugly bark. Honey, your mistake was trying this at my gate. Security will handle you. Just then, a man in a slightly better-fitting suit walked over, a Mark Thompson, shift supervisor badge, pinned to his lapel. What's the disturbance, Brenda? Brenda launched into a high-pitched, self-righteous tirade. Mark, thank goodness, this person, she gestured to Imani, is trying to board with a clearly fraudulent ticket. I mean, look at it. Z-Class. She's claiming she's from some Ethelred company, and that we should know who she is. She's causing a scene and refusing to leave. Mark Thompson, a man who had built a career on never making a decision that could get him in trouble, looked at Brenda, then at Imani. He saw a flustered, loyal employee and a young black woman who, in his eyes, simply did not fit the demographic of his premium cabin. His calculus was simple and immediate. Ma'am, Mark said, not addressing Imani by name. I'm going to have to agree with my staff. If the ticket doesn't scan, it's not valid. Our system is final. Your system is flawed, Imani insisted, desperate now, not for the flight, but for the principle. My name is Imani Carter. My PNR is 8T4G9K. Please just type it in. Mark sighed, a long, put-upon sound. We are not a travel agency, ma'am. We're in the middle of boarding a full flight. I've already seen the alert Brenda got. It's flagged for fraudulent purchase method. Now please, step aside. Flagged by who? Imani demanded. You flagged it. You did, just now. Didn't you, Brenda? Brenda turned white. Imani had hit the nail on the head. Brenda hadn't just seen an error. She had created one, manually voiding the ticket in the system based on her own prejudice, burying it under a Code 14 suspected fraud flag. That's a very serious accusation, Mark said, his voice turning threatening. You are now harassing my staff. I am calling security. You can take this up with them. This is absurd, a new voice cut in. An older white man in an impeccably tailored suit who had been watching from the front of the line stepped forward. His name was Arthur Henderson, a partner at a rival law firm. Mark, I know you. I fly this route every week. This woman is with Ethelred Capital. I was just at a luncheon with her firm's partners last week. Do you have any idea who you are talking to? Mark Thompson faltered, just for a second. He recognized Mr. Henderson, but Brenda, now cornered, doubled down. Sir, with all due respect, this is an airline security matter. It doesn't concern you, Brenda hissed. For all we know, they're in on it together. That was the final straw. Mr. Henderson looked appalled. Mark, seeing his chance to reassert authority, pointed a finger at Imani. That's it. You're done. You are officially denied boarding. And you, Mr. Henderson, need to board the plane, or you'll be staying behind as well." Gary, the other agent, physically blocked the jet bridge entrance. Brenda snatched Imani's paper passport from her hand. "We'll need this for the security report." "You are not authorized to take my passport," Imani said, her voice dangerously quiet. "I am when I suspect fraud," Brenda retorted, holding it just out of her reach. The final boarding call echoed through the terminal. The door to the jet bridge was closing. Imani's meeting, the $4.2 billion deal, her entire career, all of it was evaporating in the sterile, scented air of the LAX terminal. "Give me back my passport," Imani demanded. "Security can give it to you," Brenda smirked. The door to the jet bridge clicked shut. The plane was gone. Brenda, Gary, and Mark stood there, a triumphant little phalanx. "See?" Brenda said, her voice full of mock pity. "You missed your flight." Imani simply stood there for a long moment. The humiliation was a physical weight, pressing the air from her lungs. But beneath it, a cold, tectonic resolve was forming. She looked at the three of them, memorizing their faces, their names. "Brenda Slattery, Gary Jenkins, Mark Thompson," she said, her voice a flat, dead calm monotone. "You have no idea what you've just done." She turned, pulled out her phone, and walked away from the gate. Brenda, watching her go, laughed to Gary. "What's she gonna do? Call her mummy?" Brenda turned back to her computer. She picked up Imani's passport and, with a spiteful flourish, tossed it into a metal bin under her desk. Imani didn't go far. She walked until she was just out of earshot, her back to the triumphant trio at gate 14B. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a rage so profound it was almost silent. She could feel the stares of other passengers. They saw a young black woman, denied boarding, probably a problem. They saw exactly what Brenda wanted them to see. She breathed. Once. Twice. Risk analysis, Imani. That's what you do. Analyze the risk. The risk wasn't her missing a meeting. The risk was that Globalis Air, the company Ethelred was about to save, was rotten from the inside out. The problem wasn't a glitchy scanner. It was a culture of active, malicious prejudice. Her positive report, the one that praised their new fleet and improving operational logistics, was a lie. She had missed the single greatest liability, the staff. She didn't call the police. She didn't call the airline's 1-800 complaint number. She opened a secure encrypted messaging app on her phone and pressed a single name from her favorites, Julian Rothschild. Julian Rothschild was not a boss at Ethelred Capital. He was the managing partner. He was a man who ate corporations for breakfast, a man who commanded sovereign wealth funds, a man whose personal buy or sell recommendation could swing the Nasdaq. He was also the man who had personally mentored Imani, seeing in her a mind as sharp and unsentimental as his own. He picked up on the second ring, his voice curt. "Imani, you should be in the air. The board is assembling for the pre-brief." Imani's voice was shaking, but she controlled it. She turned it to ice. "Julian, I'm still at LAX. I have been denied boarding on Globalis Flight 212. Silence. Julian Rothschild did not tolerate failure. "Denied boarding? For what? A weather delay?" "No, Julian," Imani said, staring at the Globalis logo, a stylized blue bird on the wall. "I was denied boarding by a gate agent named Brenda Slattery and her supervisor, Mark Thompson." "On what grounds?" His voice was getting sharper. "On the grounds that my Z-Class corporate ticket, the $15,000 ticket you authorized, was fraudulent. The agent informed me that people like me don't get to sit in that class. She accused me of being a scammer. Her colleague, Gary Jenkins, snickered. The supervisor, Mark Thompson, upheld her decision, refused to even type in my PNR, and called airport security. They confiscated my passport. There was a heavy, loaded pause on the other end of the line. Imani could practically hear the gears turning in Rothschild's billion-dollar brain. He wasn't processing the emotion, he was processing the data. "Imani," he said, his voice now dangerously soft. "Describe them. Give me their names again. Spell them." She did. Brenda, Slattery, Markthomson. And they were aware you were from Ethelred Capital. I made that explicitly clear, as did another passenger, Arthur Henderson of Sullivan and Cromwell, who attempted to intervene on my behalf. Your agent, Ms. Slattery, implied we were co-conspirators and threatened to have him removed from the flight as well. Another pause. This one was longer. When Rothschild spoke again, his voice was no longer that of a mentor. It was the voice of a predator that had just spotted a fatal weakness in his prey. "Imani, the entire $4.2 billion credit line is predicated on your report, your signature, your assessment of their operational viability." "I know, Julian. Your report was glowing. You praised their robust new protocols and strong internal culture shift." Imani closed her eyes. The shame of the public humiliation was replaced by the cold shame of her professional miscalculation. "I was wrong, Julian. My report is garbage. I focused on the balance sheets and the fleet upgrades. I completely missed the foundational, systemic rot. Their culture isn't strong, it's actively hostile. The protocols are a joke. They empower low-level employees to make multi-billion-dollar mistakes based on bigotry." She took a shaky breath. "Julian, their front-line staff just identified their single biggest investor as a criminal. They mistook an asset for a liability. That is not a company we can save. That is a company with terminal, inoperable cancer. We are extending $4.2 billion to a corpse." Click, click, click. Imani could hear Rothschild typing on his end. "Go to the Amex Centurion Lounge, Imani," he ordered. "Buy a new ticket to New York on Delta, whatever it costs. I will wire the funds to your personal account. Get here. We have work to do." "What about the meeting?" Imani asked. "The meeting," Julian Rothschild said, his voice colder than the LAX air conditioning, "is cancelled. I am pulling the Ethelred financing package. The deal is dead." "But the CEO, Robert Walsh." "I'm calling Robert Walsh. Personally. As soon as we hang up, he needs to hear the news from me. He needs to know the exact names of the employees who just liquidated his company." He paused. "Imani, you did well. You didn't just find a risk. You were the risk assessment test, and they failed. You just saved this firm $4.2 billion. Now go. Get on that Delta flight." The line went dead. Imani stood for another moment. She turned and looked back at Gate 14B. Brenda, Gary, and Mark were laughing, sharing a coffee, probably recounting the story of the scammer they'd so bravely vanquished. Imani picked up her briefcase. She walked to the Delta terminal, her spine straight, her gait unflinching. The Queen had been taken off the board, but the game was far from over. She was just a pawn, she realized, but a pawn that had just checkmated a king. In a glass-walled boardroom 43 floors above Manhattan, Robert Walsh, the CEO of Globalis Air, was a god. He was schmoozing, his $5,000 suit immaculate, his smile beaming. With him were his CFO, his COO, and the heads of the flight attendants and pilots' unions, all gathered for a celebratory champagne toast. "To Globalis," Walsh said, raising his glass, "and to Ethelred Capital, This financing package isn't just a lifeline, it's a new beginning. His private line rang, the one with the encrypted connection to his highest-level investors. He winked at his CFO. "That'll be Julian Rothschild, calling to congratulate us. Gentlemen, if you'll excuse me." He stepped into his private office, overlooking Central Park, and picked up the receiver. "Julian, my friend, I hope you're ready to pop the champagne with us. We are—" "Robert, shut up!" Julian Rothschild's voice sliced through the phone. Robert Walsh froze, his smile collapsing. "Julian, what's wrong? Is there a problem with the wire?" "There's a problem, Robert. A $4.2 billion problem. The deal is dead. We're pulling the plug." The blood left Walsh's face. He physically stumbled, grabbing his desk. What? You can't. This is a joke. It's based on your own analyst's report. Imani Carter. She signed off. We have her signature. We're saved." "Miss Carter," Rothschild's voice was a stiletto, "is currently in the Los Angeles airport. She was supposed to be on your flight 212 to present that report. Instead, she was denied boarding." Walsh was confused. "Denied? A weather delay? A mechanical? We can get her another plane. We can—" "She was denied boarding, Robert, by your gate agent, Brenda Slattery. She was publicly humiliated. She was accused of flying with a fraudulent ticket. She was told that people like her don't fly in Z-Class. Your shift supervisor, Mark Thompson, upheld this. They called security on her. They confiscated her passport." Walsh was no longer breathing. He was gasping, like a fish on a dock. "Robert, are you listening to me?" Rothschild's voice was merciless. "Your frontline staff just treated the Ethelred analyst responsible for your entire company's future like a common criminal. The woman whose signature our entire $4.2 billion investment was resting on. No! Walsh was whispering, frantic. "Julian, this is a mistake. A misunderstanding. A horrible, horrible misunderstanding. I will fire them. I will fire them right now. I'll send my private jet for Miss Carter. I will personally apologize. You will do nothing, Robert, because there is nothing to do. This misunderstanding wasn't a glitch. It was a cultural failure. Imani's report. My God, we were fools. Her report missed the single biggest liability your company has. It's not your debt. It's your people. If your staff will do that to the woman who holds their jobs in her hand, what in God's name are they doing to your regular customers? The brand risk is catastrophic. The operational risk is unacceptable. The deal is dead, Robert. Ethelred Capital is invoking the Material Adverse Change Clause, effective immediately. We are pulling all financing. Your bridge loans are forfeit. Have your lawyers call my lawyers." Click. Robert Walsh stared at the dead receiver. The silence in his soundproof office was absolute. He felt the vibration before he heard it, the laughter and chatter from the boardroom next door. He walked to the door, opened it, and stared at his beaming, expectant executive team. "Get out," he whispered. "Robert, what did Julian say?" his CFO asked, glass still in hand. Walsh's face was a mask of pure, unadulterated terror. He picked up a crystal water pitcher from his desk and hurled it against the glass wall. It shattered, spraying water and glass shards over the $300,000 rug. The room fell silent. "Get me the head of LAX operations," Walsh screamed, his voice cracking. "Get me Mark Thompson. Get me Brenda Slattery. Get me their badge numbers. Get me their social security numbers. I want them found, and I want them on a call with me in the next 5 minutes, or I will burn that entire terminal to the ground." His co-O, a man who had survived the 9/11 airspace shutdown and the 2008 financial crash, had never seen anything like this. "Robert, What happened? Walsh sank into his chair, his hands shaking so badly he could barely grip the armrests. He pulled it, Walsh whispered, tears of rage welling in his eyes. Rothschild pulled the financing, all of it, because of a gate agent. He looked up, his eyes wild. We're bankrupt. As of right now, we are bankrupt. Back at LAX, Brenda Slattery was finishing her shift. She had just finished a long, colourful text to her friend about the ghetto girl who tried to play her. Gary was laughing, reading it over her shoulder. Mark Thompson had already retreated to his office, pleased with how he'd de-escalated the situation. "Can you believe the nerve?" Brenda cackled, reapplying her chalky pink lipstick. "Crying about Ethelred Capital. I've never even heard of it. Probably a payday loan office." "Totally," Gary agreed, pulling on his jacket. "You handled it perfectly, Bren. Showed her who's boss." Just as Brenda was about to log out of her terminal, the phone at the podium rang. This wasn't the regular black phone for internal calls. This was the red phone, the one that hadn't rung since 9/11. It was the direct, no encryption needed, the world is ending line from the CEO's office. Brenda and Gary stared at it. It rang again, a shrill, terrifying shriek. Brenda, her hand trembling, picked it up. "Globalis Air, Gate 14B, Agent Slattery speaking." A voice, which she did not recognize, screamed at her so loudly that she dropped the receiver. It clattered against the podium, the tiny voice still yelling, distorted and furious. "Slattery, put me on speaker, now!" Shaking, Brenda fumbled with the phone and hit the speaker button. The voice of Robert Walsh, CEO, filled the empty gate area. "Who is this?" This is lead agent Brenda Slattery, sir. And is Gary Jenkins there?" Gary went rigid. Yes, sir. Right here." "And is your useless, incompetent supervisor Mark Thompson anywhere nearby?" I can get him. Get him! Get him! Now!" Brenda, now pale and sweating, hit the intercom button for the supervisor's office. Mark, you need to get to the gate. It's the red phone. It's Mr. Walsh." In seconds, Mark Thompson came sprinting out, his tie askew. "Mr. Walsh, sir, this is Mark Thompson. What's the emergency? Is it a threat?" "The threat," Walsh roared, his voice echoing in the terminal, "is you idiots! The threat is yourselves!" The three of them stood, huddled around the phone, terrified. "I have one question for you three." Walsh's voice was now a low, shaking growl of pure hatred. "One question, and your answer will determine if I just fire you, or if I have you arrested for corporate sabotage. What did you do to Imani Carter?" Brenda's mind went blank. "Who? I don't. Do not lie to me. Brenda!" Walsh shrieked. "Flight 212, the young black woman you denied boarding, the one you accused of fraud, the one you took a passport from. What did you do?" Brenda's knees gave out. She grabbed the podium. The ticket was fake, sir. It flagged. I followed procedure." "You have no procedures for this." "You," Walsh screamed, "did not follow procedure. You created the problem. That woman was Imani Carter of Ethelred Capital, the analyst, the lead analyst on our $4.2 billion financing deal." Gary Jenkins made a small, choking sound and leaned against a wall. Mark Thompson tried to save himself. "Sir, I was unaware. The staff, they made a judgment call. I was only—" "You were the supervisor, Mark. You were paid to think. And you let your gate agent, your minimum wage tyrant, liquidate this entire company. Julian Rothschild himself, just called me. The deal is dead. He pulled the funding. He named all three of you. He named you, Brenda. He named you, Gary. He named you, Mark. You are not just fired. That is a luxury you do not get. You are suspended, pending a federal investigation into corporate sabotage. Security is on their way to your location. Do not move. Do not touch your terminals. Do not do anything. You are to be escorted from the premises. Your careers are over. You are blacklisted from this industry for life. But take comfort in this one small fact. Walsh paused, and his voice was a broken whisper. You didn't just lose your jobs. You just cost 30,000 other people theirs. Globalist Air is finished, and it's because of you. The line went dead. The three of them stood in the silence. Gary was hyperventilating. Mark Thompson was staring at the red phone as if it were a bomb. Brenda Slattery, her mind finally processing the words, slid down the podium and was violently, physically ill all over the floor of her spotless first-class gate. The news didn't leak. It hemorrhaged. By 5 a.m. Eastern Time the next morning, every major financial news outlet was running the same banner headline. Ethelred Capital pulls 4.2B Globalis Air financing. Deal dead. The market reaction was not a correction. It was a free fall. Globalis Air stock, ticker GBLS, which had been trading at a hopeful $18 a share, plummeted 92% in pre-market trading. It opened at $1.45. Trading was halted within 3 minutes, but that was just the numbers. The human cost was immediate. Globalis Air, as Julian Rothschild knew and Robert Walsh had feared, was operating on fumes. They had been using Ethelred's bridge loans to pay for everything. Their fuel, their landing fees, their payroll. When Ethelred pulled the plug, the corporate credit cards were declined. In London, a 787 bound for Singapore was denied refueling. The passengers were stuck on the tarmac for 8 hours before the flight was, with a single, cold email, cancelled indefinitely. In Chicago, the catering trucks refused to load food. In Tokyo, the airport authority seized 2 777s as collateral for unpaid landing fees. By noon, the entire Globalis air fleet was grounded, worldwide. The story of why went viral. It was too juicy, too karmic to stay secret. An aviation blog, The Cranky Flyer, got the internal memo. The story was everywhere. The $4 billion gate agent, how 3 employees bankrupted an airline. The public, already fed up with air travel, turned on Globalis with a vengeance. The story of Imani Carter became a rallying cry. Fly While Black trended on Twitter. Arthur Henderson, the lawyer who had tried to help, gave a full, scathing interview to the New York Times, corroborating every detail. "I watched it happen," his quote read. "It wasn't a mistake. It was malice. It was prejudice, pure and simple. And that prejudice, it turns out, had a $4.2 billion price tag." The 30,000 Globalis employees were in shock. Pilots, flight attendants, mechanics, baggage handlers, all of them woke up to find their jobs, their pensions, and their futures had been evaporated. The unions were furious, but not at Ethelred. Their rage was directed squarely at Brenda, Gary, and Mark. Their photos were leaked. They became the faces of corporate self-destruction. Within 72 hours, Robert Walsh, disgraced and destroyed, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. It was denied. The company had no assets, no path to reorganization. Ethelred, as their primary creditor, moved to force a Chapter 7 liquidation. Globalis Air was to be sold for parts. From her new office in New York, Imani Carter, now a vice president, watched the collapse. She felt a profound, heavy sickness. She had wanted justice, not a corporate graveyard. She walked into Julian Rothschild's office. 30,000 people, Julian, she said, her voice quiet. Julian looked up from a stack of files. Yes, a tragedy. Did I do this? Julian stood, walking to his window overlooking the city. "Imani, look at me. You are a geologist. You were sent to inspect a dam. You found a hairline crack, and you reported it. The fact that the dam burst into 1 billion pieces the second you touched it only proves the entire structure was rotten to the core. You didn't cause the collapse. You found it. You saved this firm, and our clients, 4.2 billion. The people responsible for this are the people who built a rotten dam, and the 3 people who were hammering at it with pickaxes just because they didn't like the color of your hard hat." He put a hand on her shoulder. "This will be the hardest lesson of your career, Imani. The numbers are just reflections of people, and people are the biggest liability of all. Now go. We have a hostile takeover of a logistics firm in Brazil to analyze, and this time, start with their HR files." The bankruptcy of Globalis Air was not a graceful, managed decline. It was a demolition. News of the Ethelred incident had shattered the company's last shred of credibility. With the $4.2 billion financing, their only life support, gone, the company was not just bankrupt, it was toxic. In the cold, sterile light of a federal bankruptcy court, a judge signed the order for a Chapter 7 liquidation. There would be no reorganization, no second chances. Globalis Air was to be sold for parts. Its landing slots at Heathrow and JFK were snapped up by Delta. Its newer 787s were repossessed by Boeing. Its logos were scraped off terminal walls. Within 6 months, the blue and gold bird, once a symbol of prestige, was nothing but a ghost in aviation memory. The 30,000 employees were scattered to the wind. Their pensions and 401ks evaporated. The entire company was a crater. And at the epicenter of that crater, left standing in the smoking ruin, were Mark, Gary, and Brenda. The media storm was brief but brutal. For 2 weeks, their faces were plastered across the Daily Mail, the New York Post, and cable news chyrons. The $4 billion Karen. 3 idiots liquidate an airline. They were doxxed, their addresses and phone numbers posted on angry forums for laid-off Globalis pilots. A federal investigation into corporate sabotage was opened, but quietly closed. A prosecutor, in an uncharacteristically candid moment, told a reporter, "What are we going to do? Charge them with murder? The victim is a corporation that's already dead. There's nothing left to prosecute." There was no prison. There was no fine. There was only the slow, grinding, and inescapable karma of the real world. Mark Thompson, the supervisor, was the man who had built his career on backing his team. He was 58 years old. His 25-year pension, tied directly to the company's now worthless stock, vanished overnight. He received a single, final check for $174, the legal minimum. He was a man of procedure, and he believed the system would save him. "It was a mistake," he told his wife, "a misunderstanding. I have 25 years of flawless management experience." He applied for a station manager position at American. He didn't get a call back. He applied for a supervisory role at United. He got an interview. The regional director, a sharp woman half his age, looked at his resume. "Mark Thompson. Globalis Mark Thompson?" she asked, her pen hovering. "I was the shift supervisor at LAX, yes," Mark said, his collar suddenly tight. "So you were the supervisor that day, with the Ethelred analyst." It wasn't a question. "My staff made a judgment call," Mark began, his voice weak. "I was de-escalating a situation." The woman's face was polite, but her eyes were ice. "Mr. Thompson, our gate agents are the face of our company. Our supervisors are the brain. We need people who can tell the difference between a situation and a $4.2 billion asset. We need people who think. Thank you for your time. We'll be in touch." He was never in touch. His name was poison. He was blacklisted, not by a formal decree, but by simple, brutal reputation. No airline would touch him. After 6 months, his wife left. She couldn't stand the sight of him, a man hollowed out by his own incompetence. He sold their suburban home in a short sale to pay the legal fees. He ended up in a small, damp, one-bedroom apartment in Queens, the sound of planes from LaGuardia rattling his windows. He burned through his savings. Finally, with no other options, he applied for a job, using only his first initial, M. Thompson. It was with a third-party sanitation contractor. The job? Night shift janitor at JFK International Airport. 18 months after the incident, Mark was pushing a grey, sloshing mop bucket through the gleaming new international terminal. It was 4 a.m. His back ached, and the smell of industrial disinfectant burned his nose. He was polishing the floor outside the brand-new, exclusive Ethelred Capital First-Class Lounge. Ethelred had become so powerful in the wake of the Globalis collapse, having saved their clients billions, that they now co-sponsored a lounge with Delta. The glass doors slid open. A group of people, vibrant and laughing even at this hour, walked out. Mark froze. He knew that laugh. Imani Carter walked out, flanked by 3 men in suits, including the unmistakable, shark-like profile of Julian Rothschild. She wasn't the VP anymore. She was a junior partner. She wore a simple, elegant black trench coat and carried a leather briefcase that probably cost more than Mark's car. She was in the middle of a story, her face alive with intelligence and humor. So I told the board, the liability isn't in the debt, it's in the culture. She turned her head, and her eyes met Mark's. He was holding a mop. He was wearing a drab grey uniform with a "Hi, my name is Mark" patch. Her laughter didn't stop, but it faded. Her stride didn't falter. She didn't sneer. She didn't gasp. She just saw him. Her eyes, clear and unblinking, held his for 1, 2, 3 devastating seconds. In that look, Mark saw everything. He saw the man he had been, a supervisor with authority, and the man he was, a cleaner of other people's filth. He saw the casual, catastrophic mistake he had made in trusting prejudice over a passenger's desperate plea. He saw the woman he had dismissed, now a titan of her industry, walking out of a lounge named after her own firm, while he was left on the outside, cleaning the glass. Mark's face burned with a shame so total it was crushing. He broke contact first, his eyes dropping to the dirty water in his bucket. Imani Carter never broke her stride. She turned back to Rothschild, said something, and they both laughed as they walked toward their gate. Mark Thompson stood there, shaking, long after they were gone. He had spent 25 years climbing a ladder, only to be sent back to the very bottom, forced to clean the floors of the world he had thrown away. Gary Jenkins, young and arrogant, believed he was the victim. "Brenda made the call," he told his parents. "I just stood there. I'm suing for wrongful termination." He found a small-time strip mall lawyer who took his $500 retainer. A week later, he got a call. "Yeah, Mr. Jenkins?" The lawyer's voice was bored. "I looked into your case. You were an at-will employee. They could fire you for wearing the wrong color socks. But more to the point, you were an accomplice in an act of gross negligence that directly led to, hang on, let me check my notes, a $4.2 billion loss in financing and the immediate bankruptcy of the company. You don't have a case. You're lucky you're not in civil court for the rest of your life. Don't call this office again." Gary's rage was acidic. He blamed Brenda. He blamed Mark. He blamed that woman for being a trap. He posted long, anonymous rants on aviation forums, painting himself as a whistleblower fired for questioning a passenger. Nobody believed him. He was 29. He was broke. His parents, ashamed, cut him off. His resume, with globalis air on it, was an immediate rejection. He had one asset, his 2018 Honda Civic. He signed up to be a ride-share driver. For 2 years, his life was a blur of LA traffic, fast food wrappers, and the sour smell of spilled beer in his back seat. He was bitter, his face set in a permanent sneer. One Tuesday night he got a ping, a 10 p.m. pickup from the Beverly Wilshire Hotel. A big fare, he thought. He pulled up. The valet, who looked at Gary's car with disdain, opened the back door. 4 people, 2 men and 2 women, all black, all in their late 20s, piled in. They were electric, buzzing with a successful energy, dressed in sharp, expensive clothes. "LAX, man," one of them said, clapping his friend on the back. "And hit it! We're celebrating." "Which terminal?" Gary mumbled, his eyes on the navigation. "Delta 1, the woman said. "We're heading to New York. This man right here." She pointed to the other man, just made partner at the firm. Youngest partner in firm history. A bottle of champagne was popped in the back. "To David," they all cheered. Gary's hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles were white. He looked in the rearview mirror. They were him. They were the age he was supposed to be. They were successful, powerful, on their way to a first-class lounge, while he was their driver. They were Imani Carters, a whole new generation of them, confident and powerful, and he was their servant. He drove in a toxic, seething silence. The entire ride, they talked deals, bonuses, and summer plans in the Hamptons. He pulled up to the Delta One first-class check-in. They all piled out, still laughing. The new partner walked up to the window, crumpled a $10 bill, and tossed it onto Gary's front seat. "Thanks, Chief. Keep the change." Gary stared at the bill. It was a $110 fare. He had been given a $10 tip and called Chief. He watched them, arm in arm, disappear into the terminal. He sat at the curb until a security guard banged on his window. Gary drove to the rideshare waiting lot, a holding pen of other drivers staring at their phones. He turned off his app, put his head against the steering wheel, and sat in the dark. The contrails of planes he would never fly on again, streaking the night sky above him. Brenda's fate was the most complete. She was the face of the disaster. As the lead agent, she was the instigator. The media had painted her as the billion-dollar Karen. She received thousands of death threats. She had to sell her condo in Redondo Beach, not just because of the threats, but because the Globalis bankruptcy trustee filed a civil suit against her, Mark, and Gary for gross negligence to recoup anything for the creditors. The suit was a formality, but it forced all 3 of them into personal bankruptcy. Brenda lost everything. Her home, her car, her 401k, her reputation. She moved in with her sister in Arizona, but her presence was a toxic cloud. Her sister's kids were bullied at school. "Isn't your aunt the racist who bankrupted an airline?" After 6 months, her sister tearfully asked her to leave. She drifted. She aged 20 years in 3. The sharp, helmet-like blonde hair was now a stringy, dishwater grey. The sharp, judgmental eyes were now dull and permanently frightened. She ended up in Barstow, California, a desolate truck-stop town in the absolute middle of the Mojave Desert. It was the only place she could be anonymous. The only job that would hire her, a 60-year-old woman with no resume and a name that flagged on Google, was the graveyard shift at a 24-hour Pilot gas station. It was 3:15 a.m. on a Wednesday. The fluorescent lights of the station hummed, a beacon in the vast, empty blackness. Brenda, wearing a stained blue smock with a name tag that read Pat, was wiping down a sticky, coffee-stained counter. The bell on the door chimed, a sleek, black Tesla Model S, silent as a shark, was parked at the charging station outside. A woman walked in. She was wearing an expensive, matching cashmere sweatsuit, looking relaxed and poised. She moved with an easy, unthinking confidence. Brenda didn't look up. "Help you?" she mumbled, her voice a gravelly monotone. "Yes, please. A bottle of smart water, and one $20 Powerball quick pick." Brenda's blood pressure monitor, which she wore constantly, would have beeped. She knew that voice. She had heard it in her nightmares. Her head snapped up. It was Imani Carter. She didn't look angry. She didn't look vengeful. She just looked thirsty. Brenda's hands began to shake so badly she dropped the scanner. It clattered to the floor. "Oh, God," Brenda whispered. Imani looked at her. Her eyes travelled to the name tag. Pot. Then back to Brenda's ruined face. And she knew. That'll be 23, 50, Brenda stammered, her hands fumbling with the register. Imani didn't say anything. She simply reached into her purse and slid a card onto the counter. It was an American Express Centurion card. The black card. The invitation-only card for the world's absolute elite. The card that made Z-Class look like a bus ticket. Brenda, the former gate agent, knew exactly what that card represented. It was a physical manifestation of a world she had pretended to guard, and a person she had fatally misjudged. She tried to run the card. Her old grimy machine beeped. Connection error. I'm sorry. It's the machine." Brenda was starting to hyperventilate. "It's fine," Imani said, her voice patient, almost gentle. She reached back into her purse and pulled out a crisp, fresh $100 bill. "Keep the change." Brenda fumbled with the till, her tears blurring her vision as she handed Imani the water and the lottery ticket. She couldn't stop staring. I know you," Brenda finally choked out. You're her." Imani took a sip of her water. She didn't confirm or deny. She just waited. I'm so sorry," Brenda sobbed, a horrible, racking sound that echoed in the empty store. I lost everything. My condo, my job, my life. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean." "You didn't mean to what?" Imani asked, her voice not cruel, just clinical. "You didn't mean to accuse me of forgery? Or you didn't mean to be wrong?" It was a mistake. A horrible mistake. Please, you have to forgive me." Imani looked at the broken woman in front of her. She thought of the 30,000 jobs. She thought of the humiliation. And she felt nothing. Just a vast, cold emptiness. "Forgive you?" Imani said, almost to herself. "It's not about my forgiveness, Brenda." She looked at the gas station, at the stained counters, at the flickering lights. "This is just the audit. It's the consequences." Imani held up the Powerball ticket in her hand. "You know, the day you stopped me, I was flying to New York to save your company. My report was a strong buy. I was going to recommend the full $4.2 billion credit line. I was going to save your job, your pension, your condo." Brenda's sob caught in her throat. The reality of it, stated so plainly, was suffocating. "You had a winning lottery ticket," Imani said, tapping the Powerball ticket in her hand. "You had a $4.2 billion winning ticket, and you ripped it up. You ripped it up because you didn't like the color of the hand that was giving it to you." Imani put the cap back on her water. She tucked the lottery ticket into her pocket. "Have a good night, Pat." Imani Carter turned and walked out of the gas station. The bell chimed. The door of the Tesla clicked shut, and the car pulled silently away, its red taillights disappearing into the vast, dark desert. Brenda Slattery was left alone. She collapsed against the counter, the $100 bill clutched in her hand. It was more money than she had in her bank account, but it was the heaviest thing she had ever held. The buzzing of the lights was deafening. The karma hadn't been a lightning bolt from the sky. It was a life sentence, and she was serving it, one 3 a.m. shift at a time, in a neon-lit hell of her own making, forever. In the end, this was never just about a fake ticket. It was about a company whose culture was so poisoned, it couldn't tell the difference between a threat and its own savior. Brenda, Gary, and Mark lost their jobs. 30,000 people lost theirs. And Imani Carter, she became a vice president at one of the most powerful firms in the world. Karma isn't always instant, but when it hits this hard, it's a real-life story we can all learn from. What do you think? Was the karma too harsh, or was it exactly what they deserved? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you love stories of hard-hitting karma and real-world justice, make sure you hit that like button, share this video with a friend, and subscribe to the channel. You won't want to miss the story I have for you next week. Thanks for watching.